Knew that Ali always try to come back in the 15th round. I ain't shit.
Leon Spinks lived his life as if every round was a fire he had to walk through. People remember the missing teeth, the crooked smile, the wild energy that made him look like a man who feared nothing. But those who truly studied him understood a deeper truth. Leon Spinks carried memories the way a soldier carries old scars. Some faded, some stayed open. And some were carved so deeply that even decades later he could still feel them burn. Before the world crowned him the man who dethroned Muhammad Ali in 1978, Leon had already survived battles far more personal. The streets, the Marines, the Olympic trials, the loneliness of early fame. But 5 men left marks that never healed. 5 men whose names, faces, and punches stayed with him long after the cheering stopped. Some tested his courage. Some shattered his confidence. Some defined his glory. Some haunted him in silence. Every fighter has a private list like this. Not of the toughest opponents on paper, but of the men who touched something deeper. The ones who made him question himself in the locker room. The ones whose voices echoed in his mind at 3 in the morning. The ones who made him grow. The ones who almost broke him. The ones he never forgot. Leon Spinks was raw, unpredictable, and dangerous on his best nights. Yet, behind the bravado was a man who learned the hard way that greatness always demands a price. These 5 men shaped the rise, the fall, and the emotional backbone of his career. They were the reminders of everything he fought for and everything he lost. Who were they? What did they take from him? And what lessons did they leave behind that defined the man he became? These are the 5 men Leon Spinks never forgot. Before those 5 unforgettable names entered his life, Leon Spinks had already lived a career that felt like a lifetime, compressed into a few chaotic years. Born in St. Louis, he grew up in a world where survival meant moving fast, punching hard, and never showing fear. Boxing was not a dream, it was an escape route. By the time he reached the 1976 Olympics in Montreal, the rough kid from the projects had become a United States Marine turned gold medalist, a fighter whose raw energy electrified every arena he stepped into. Leon's rise was not steady, it was explosive. In only his 8th professional fight, he did what the boxing world believed impossible. On a February night in 1978, he outworked and outwilled Muhammad Ali to win the heavyweight championship of the world. It was one of the greatest upsets in boxing history, the kind of victory that rewrites a man's destiny. But fame arrived faster than discipline, and pressure arrived faster than wisdom. One glory-filled night put Leon Spinks on top of the world, and the months that followed showed how quickly a champion can lose everything. From that point forward, Leon's story became a series of collisions with men who challenged him in ways trophies never could. Some beat him physically. Others challenged him psychologically. Others exposed his weaknesses or reminded him of the innocence he had lost along the way. Every one of those men shaped his path. To understand the 5 names he never forgot, you must understand the fighter Leon became after the world title. No longer the fearless kid. No longer the Olympic hero. He became a man searching for himself in the middle of a storm he never fully learned to control. And each of the 5 men played a part in that storm. Number 5, Dwight Muhammad Qawi. Number 5 enters Leon Spinks' life not as an opponent, but as a reckoning. Dwight Muhammad Qawi was built like a tank, short, compact, relentless. A man who carried the street inside every punch. They called him the Cameroon Tiger. And when he fought, the ring felt smaller. The ropes felt closer. The air felt heavier. Leon had faced bruisers before, but Qawi was different. He was a pressure cooker disguised as a human being. Their fight in 1986 was not a championship moment or a grand rivalry. It was something more intimate. It was the night Leon Spinks realized that time was moving faster than he could handle. Qawi pressed him from the opening bell, crowding his space, cutting the ring, forcing Leon to confront his fading reflexes and the weight of every mistake he had ever made. There was no room to breathe, no room to think. Only Qawi's forehead in his chest and fists pounding like drumbeats. In the corner between rounds, Leon sat on the stool with his chest rising like a drowning man reaching for air. His trainer whispered, "He is walking you down. You have got to move." Leon nodded, but his eyes told the truth. The legs that once danced around Muhammad Ali were not listening anymore. Halfway through the fight, Qawi leaned close enough for Leon to hear him over the crowd. In a slow, steady voice, he said, "You are not the same man who beat Ali." It was not trash talk. It was an observation. and it cut deeper than any uppercut that landed that night. The beating that followed was systematic. Qawi attacked his body until Leon folded forward, then lifted his punches to the head like a man chopping down a tree. Leon fought back with courage, with pride, with whatever his spirit could still offer, but the gap between them was undeniable. This was not the Leon of 1978. This was a fighter trying to outrun the ghosts of who he used to be. Technical knockout, another loss on the record, but what stayed with Leon was not the defeat. It was the truth Qawi forced him to face. Time is undefeated, and every champion eventually meets a man who shows him exactly where the edge is. Years later, Leon would talk about Qawi with a strange mixture of respect and pain. He never criticized him, never blamed him. Instead, he would say he fought like he meant every second. What he really meant was that Qawi made him confront his own decline. Fighters can lie to reporters. They can lie to fans. They can lie to themselves. But the ring never lies. Qawi carved a reminder into Leon's memory that never faded. A reminder of how quickly glory slips away and how brutally the sport can tell a man the truth. Number 4, Mike Tyson. Number 4 was not a rival in the traditional sense. Mike Tyson was a storm, a force of nature, a young heavyweight who carried an aura that could break a man long before the first punch landed. When Leon Spinks stepped into the ring with Tyson in their 1990 exhibition, he already knew this was not a normal encounter. Tyson was 24, in his physical prime, built like a coiled spring that could snap with terrifying speed. Leon was older, bruised by years of punishment, a veteran whose body no longer answered every command. From the opening moment, Tyson approached him with the cold silence of a predator. No smile, no emotion, only an intensity that felt inhuman. The crowd expected entertainment. Tyson expected obedience. And in that small ring, under the bright lights, Leon felt the weight of facing something closer to inevitability than to an opponent. Tyson's jab cracked like a whip. His hooks came so fast they blurred in the air. Leon tried to circle, tried to use experience, tried to slip the incoming shots, but Tyson kept stepping forward, each footfall echoing like a warning. And then came the moment that Leon never forgot. After catching Leon with a short right hand, Tyson leaned in, his voice low, almost calm, and said, "You do not belong in here with me." It was not cruel. It was not loud. It was a statement of pure, cold reality. And it struck Leon harder than the punch itself. For a man who once dethroned Muhammad Ali, hearing those words felt like time folding in on him, as if the sport was reminding him of every mile he had traveled and every mile he had lost. The exchange continued with violence that bordered on merciful. Tyson did not celebrate. He did not toy with Leon. He simply dismantled him the way a young lion dismantles an older one. Short, precise combinations. A body attack that drained the breath from Leon's lungs. Eyes that never blinked. By the end, Leon stood there on instinct. Pride kept his knees straight. Heart kept his chin high. But even he knew this was no longer a battle. It was a message written in leather and sweat. Afterward, backstage, Leon sat quietly with his gloves still on, elbows resting on his knees. Someone asked him what Tyson felt like in the ring. Leon looked up and said, "He is not fast, he is instant." It was the most honest description anyone ever gave of Mike Tyson. But the deeper reason Tyson stayed in Leon's memory was not the beating. It was the mirror he held up. Tyson reminded Leon of the fire he once had as a young fighter, the hunger, the violence, the certainty, the unstoppable will. Tyson was what Leon had been in 1978, and seeing that version of himself in another man was both awe-inspiring and heartbreaking. For the rest of his life, Leon spoke of Tyson with respect, fear, admiration, and a strange brotherhood. He never forgot the power, he never forgot the words, and he never forgot what it felt like to stand across from a man who had the aura of destiny itself. Number 3, Larry Holmes. Number 3 was the night Leon Spinks learned what it meant to face a champion who weaponized intelligence as much as power. Larry Holmes was not a brawler, he was a surgeon. A man with a jab so precise it felt less like a punch and more like a scalpel, slicing away a fighter's confidence. When Leon stepped in against Holmes in 1981 for the heavyweight title, he entered the ring hoping to reclaim the mountaintop. What he faced instead was a masterclass in control. Holmes studied Leon from the opening seconds. No rush, no wild exchanges, just that famous jab, flicking out with mechanical rhythm, each one snapping Leon's head back like a reminder. A reminder that Holmes was the champion now. A reminder that every mistake Leon made would be punished. A reminder that the sport had changed faster than he had. Leon tried to close the distance. He swung wide hooks. He tried to rough Holmes up inside. But every time he stepped forward, Holmes stabbed him with another jab, turning his face one punch at a time. The crowd could feel it. The commentators could feel it. Even Leon could feel it. Holmes was dismantling him with the calm patience of a man who knew exactly who he was. Between rounds, Leon sat breathing through his mouth, sweat rolling down his chest, like a man trying to stay afloat. His trainer put ice on the swelling, whispering, "You gotta get inside." Leon nodded, but Holmes made inside feel like a mile away. Every attempt Leon made, Holmes cut off with footwork that was almost cruel in its simplicity. Midway through the fight, Holmes landed a 1-2 that echoed across the arena. Leon stumbled back, covering up as Holmes advanced with cold precision. There was no hatred in Holmes's eyes, no chaos, no rage, only calculation. Only a champion doing what champions do, and Leon knew it. In a brief clinch, Leon whispered, "Man, you are sharp tonight." Holmes replied quietly, "I have to be." It was a small moment, but it stayed with Leon forever. Two fighters, locked together, acknowledging a truth only they could fully understand. One man rising, one man fading, both bound by respect. Holmes eventually broke Leon down until the referee stepped in. Technical knockout. Another page in Leon's turbulent journey. But the memory that endured was not the loss. It was the way Holmes fought him. Controlled, cold, unshakable. A man who turned the ring into a chessboard and moved with the certainty of someone who knew he could not be denied. For Leon, Holmes represented the kind of fighter he sometimes wished he could have been. More disciplined, more focused, less chaotic, less consumed by the whirlwind of fame. He never forgot Holmes, because Holmes showed him a different version of greatness. A greatness rooted not in wild energy, but in structure, in patience, in strategy. Years later, when people asked Leon who he respected most, he always mentioned Holmes. But when asked who he remembered most, who stayed in his thoughts long after the gloves came off, Holmes's name came even faster. Because some men beat your body, Holmes beat your understanding of yourself. Number 2, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad. Number 2 was not the most famous man Leon Spinks ever faced, but he was one of the few who left a wound that Leon carried for years. Eddie Mustafa Muhammad was slick, disciplined, sharp. A fighter who could switch from calm to vicious in a heartbeat. He had the kind of ring IQ that punished hesitation and exposed every flaw a man tried to hide. When Leon stepped in against him in 1982, he believed he could climb back toward the light heavyweight throne. What he found instead was a lesson delivered with painful clarity. From the first bell, Eddie fought like a man who had already read Leon's entire playbook. He circled with ease, waiting for Leon to overextend. When Leon lunged, Eddie stepped back half an inch and fired counters that landed with the accuracy of a craftsman. Right hands down the middle, hooks that wrapped around the guard, body shots placed so perfectly they took seconds to bloom into pain. Leon tried to push forward with the raw aggression that once overwhelmed opponents. But Eddie was too smart for chaos. He slowed the rhythm, controlled the pace, forced Leon into a style that was not his nature. And when you force a wild animal into a cage of rules, its instincts betray it. There was a moment in the third round that Leon never forgot. Eddie slipped a right hand, leaned close enough for Leon to smell the leather on his glove, and whispered, "Timing beats power." Then he stepped back and cracked Leon with a counter left hook that snapped his head sideways. It was not just a punch, it was a message. Leon felt the weight of that truth long after the fight was over. As the rounds went on, Leon's frustration grew. He swung harder, missed wider, and each miss drained his energy like water through a broken pipe. The crowd sensed it. The commentators sensed it. Even Leon knew it. Eddie had taken control of the tempo, and in boxing, tempo is everything. By the middle rounds, Eddie began targeting the body with a kind of surgical cruelty. Sharp jabs to the liver, short hooks to the ribs. Leon's breathing turned ragged, his footwork slowed, and Eddie, recognizing the shift, became even more assertive. It was not malice, it was mastery. Eventually, the referee stepped in as Leon absorbed another clean combination. technical knockout. But what stung Leon was not the stoppage. It was the knowledge that Eddie had outthought him before he had even outboxed him. For the rest of his life, Leon spoke about Eddie Mustafa Muhammad not with bitterness, but with respect, tinged with regret. Eddie was the kind of fighter who punished mistakes the way a sculptor chips flaws out of stone. Leon never forgot the lesson. Timing beats power. Discipline beats chaos. And the ring will always reveal the truth a man tries to hide from himself. Eddie Mustafa Muhammad carved a scar in Leon's memory that never healed. Not because of brutality, but because of precision. He showed Leon the price of stepping into the ring unprepared, and Leon carried that memory into every fight that followed. Number 1, Muhammad Ali. Number 1 could only ever be one man. Muhammad Ali was not just the opponent who changed Leon Spinks' career. He was the axis around which Leon's entire boxing identity rotated. The victory that defined him, the shadow that followed him, the memory he carried until his final days. Ali was the giant Leon both conquered and never escaped. When Leon Spinks walked into the ring on that February night in 1978, he was a 7-fight professional with more courage than experience. Ali was the most famous human being on earth. The man who had beaten giants, inspired nations, and transformed boxing into something bigger than sport. Leon stepped through the ropes not just to fight him, but to test the limits of his own existence. The first surprise came early. In the clinches, Ali whispered, "You think you can keep this pace all night, kid?" Leon smiled through his mouthpiece and replied, "Watch me." It was a small exchange, but it set the tone. Ali expected another challenger. What he got was a man who refused to bow before mythology. Round after round, Leon pushed him, pressed him, forced him into uncomfortable corners. Ali's eyes showed frustration, then disbelief, then something close to admiration. Leon outworked him, outwilled him, and on that night, he outlasted him. When the final bell rang and the judges announced Leon Spinks as the heavyweight champion of the world, his life changed forever. Reporters rushed him. Cameras blinded him. The world thundered his name. But the memory Leon never forgot was not the victory. It was what came after. Fame arrived like a tidal wave. Money, pressure, attention, temptation, chaos. And in the rematch 7 months later, Ali returned with the determination of a king reclaiming a stolen throne. This time, Ali fought with discipline, focus, and strategy. Leon fought with heart, but he no longer had the structure around him that a young champion needs. Ali jabbed. Ali moved. Ali controlled every second. Late in the fight, during a clinch, Ali spoke softly into Leon's ear. "You will learn from this. Every champion must." Leon never repeated those words publicly, but he remembered them forever. They were not taunts. They were lessons, a passing of truth from an aging king to the new one. When the rematch ended and Ali regained his crown, Leon felt something deeper than defeat. He felt the weight of destiny closing a chapter. In the years after, people often asked Leon what Ali meant to him. He would smile, look away for a moment, and say, "He made me a champion. He made me a better man, and he made me understand the price." Ali was the victory that lifted Leon to immortality. Ali was the loss that grounded him back to earth. Ali was the name that shaped the rise, the fall, and the emotional center of his entire career. Leon Spinks never forgot Muhammad Ali. Not the punches, not the whispers, not the lessons, not the night that changed both their lives. Some men enter a fighter's story as opponents. Ali entered Leon's story as destiny. When people look back at Leon Spinks, they often see the wild smile, the missing teeth, the impossible victory over Muhammad Ali, and the chaotic path that followed. But beneath the surface was a man shaped by every blow he absorbed, every lesson whispered in the clinch, and every opponent who forced him to confront the truth about himself. The 5 men he never forgot did more than challenge his body. They carved out the emotional landscape of his life. Boxing is a sport that strips a man down to what he truly is. There are no shortcuts, no illusions, no places to hide. The ring remembers everything. And so did Leon. He carried those memories like markers on a long road, reminders of where he stumbled, where he rose, and where he found clarity. Fear, pride, regret, admiration, respect, defiance, all of it lived inside him. In the end, Leon Spinks was not defined by perfection. He was defined by honesty. by the way he faced the world with a reckless kind of courage, by the way he kept fighting even when life hit harder than any punch he ever took in the ring. And by the way, he understood that the men he never forgot were part of a greater journey, one that turned a kid from Street Lewis into a figure etched forever into boxing history. Sometimes the memories a fighter carries are heavier than the belts he wins. But those memories are also what keep his legacy alive.